So, welcome very much. As per what you saw, the title of today's webinar is The Secrets of Financial Independence and Retiring Early. And the first thing that I just wanted us to do is to get the secret sauce out of the way. So, we're not going to keep you waiting for you to know what's really happening. We're going to tell you what the secret sauce to financial independence is. So, it's a simple three-step formula. So you have to work on yourself, number one. Secondly, you have to invest a lot in terms of time. And lastly, it involves a lot of discipline. And we'll go into a lot more details on each of this. But there you have it. The secret sauce is that simple. It's invest in yourself, give yourself time, and also prepare to have lots of discipline. So to start off, this session is for you. It's as much for you to learn as I'm also learning on this journey. So feel free to get questions. We do have a Q&A box. Feel free to ask questions. Feel free to leave any messages or where you would like to understand a bit more in the chat box. And we'll see as much as possible how to get those sorted out. So the thing about it is, in as much as we've talked about the secret sauce, is that the problem with life is that it's not as simple as black and white. So the secret sauce, yes, might have 3 elements, but then it does take time for you to work on each of them. So the first bit is yourself. And when you think about yourself, you have to be very careful with your spending habits. So there's a famous quote by Charles Chaff who says, it's not your salary that makes you rich, it's your spending habits. So as you're working on yourself, the first thing to focus on is your spending habits. But this is advice that we've had before. It's not the first time that we've had advice, people telling us that we need to save more and spend less. So why is it very hard, in as much as this is advice we've had over and over, and we know intuitively that we should be doing it? Quite simply, it's because we are all human. And being human means that we are prone to mistakes, and it's very easy for us to be tempted. So 3 things usually happen to us as humans. So number one is your friend does come up with a new car, new watch, new pair of shoes, and it's very easy to be tempted to want to join them and to buy a similar set of shoes, similar car as them, or to compete. The second thing is that everywhere we look, there's always advertising telling us to buy more stuff. So the thing about advertising is that it's geared to help to make us spend more. It's geared to make us feel that we are being left out every time that we are not buying the latest item and spending. And this inherently makes us very easily prone to spending more. And lastly is that it's very easy for us to spend out of excessively out of what we actually make as income. So there's access to mobile loans, there's credit cards, there's all those things that are available to us for us to spend more. So just recently, about last week on Tuesday, actually, so there was this headline in the Business Daily that basically said that Safaricom was lending about 1 billion shillings daily during the COVID era. And if you think about it, this is an enormous amount of money, meaning it's very easy for us to access credit and to spend more than what we actually earn. But there's also deeper reasons why we end up spending more. So first is that spending money makes us happy, but saving usually does not. And I ask you to disregard the gender choice in this particular image, but of course, this is a feeling we usually feel. Every time you go out shopping, it leaves you with a certain feeling of happiness that you feel like you've achieved and you can be able to access more. But then when you're saving, it's just putting money somewhere and you don't necessarily see what that is doing for you. The thing about saving is that there is a famous quote that says that saving and investment is like watching paint dry. It's not fun. It's like watching grass grow. It's not fun, but at the same time, it does bring a lot of benefits whenever you do achieve your goals. The second thing is that whenever we are saving, the problem is to achieve financial goals takes a long time. So if you think about it, you have to set a goal, you have to make a plan, you have to get to work on the plan, you have to stick to the plan, then you reach the goal, and that's when you achieve it. And usually the goal is 10, 15, 20 years out, and it's very hard for you not to see the end. So it's like like I said, it's like watching paint dry or watching grass grow, and it's very boring, and it does take a long time to achieve. Then thirdly is that life always happens. Just think about this simple image that we have here about this prisoner who was trying to break out of jail, and he's very happy that he's already made it almost half the way out of jail. And little does he know that he's about to get hit with the biggest bomb in his life, because he's digging into a pit latrine. So of course this would be the mother of all bad days for them, and this happens a lot for us in our lives. We plan, we make all the best of plans, and then life happens. Somebody gets sick. Along the way we make bad decisions that end up rubbishing what we've done over a certain period of time. So important for us to understand these three things. And the best thing we can always do is to be prepared. And for each of these three things, just provided you're prepared, you'll be able to do the right things, and you'll be able not to get hit in the face when things do happen that are not so fun. So the first thing is, when you think about saving not being fun, so where do we find the fun in saving? So first thing is that we have to learn to spend time and not money. And there's a lot of things we can do for cheap. So it's not about always going out to a movie or going out for drinks. You can be able to spend time without necessarily spending money. One thing that you could do is a lot of these activities we've listed here, things that you can do without spending a lot of money. So you can invest your time in learning a new art, whether it's drawing, whether it's doing some art forms, pottery, all those kind of things. They cost much cheaper than a weekend out or buying yourself a new pair of shoes or a new car. A lot of DIY activities also save you money, and the good thing is you can actually make something that makes you a lot happy whenever you achieve it. You can invest your time in appreciating music and embracing movies. They're of course a lot cheaper than spending money going out. You can spend your time investing in writing, riding bikes, drawing, photography, and many other things that you can do that not necessarily spend money, but they spend time. Then the second thing is that you need to remind yourself why you're doing it. So why are you investing, and why are you putting money aside for you to save? Is it that you're trying to achieve a certain goal? Is it that you want to be financially independent? Is it that you want to make the best of your life for yourself or for your children and for your children's children? So you need to remind yourself why you're doing it. And this reminder needs to be a constant one. So if it's every month, every 2 months, you need to be reminding yourself why you're doing it, because that's the only way you'll stick to your goal. Then thirdly, it's important to surround yourself with like-minded people. So there's a famous quote that says that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you actually look around yourself, you will find that it's very easy for you to get lost based on the type of people you walk around with and the type of friends that you keep with you. So it's important for you to surround yourself with like-minded people and people who understand that you're trying to achieve a certain financial goal, and it's important for you to save and put the money aside for you to achieve that. So this is some good ways for you to be able to find the fun in saving. It's spend time, don't spend money. Remind yourself why you're trying to save, and surround yourself with like-minded individuals. And with this, you'll be able to make fun while saving. And you need to do it constantly so that you keep having that reminder. The second thing is financial goals take time. So how do we prepare for that? And how do we embrace the fact that either way it's going to take time to achieve financial goals? So financial goals is like a journey of 1,000 steps. And it's the first step that actually counts. The first step being that you need to focus on micro goals. So micro goals in this sense means that to save 1,000,000 shillings, it is the first 10,000, the first 1,000, and even the first 10 shilling that counts. So what is that micro goal? So maybe you want to save 1,000,000 shillings over the next 5 years. So you could say, I will do 200,000 every year. But even that is still a big goal. So how do you even bring it to become even a smaller goal? So 200,000 could be 1,000 shilling a day, or could be 30,000 shillings a month. And with that, whenever you focus on that small goal of putting aside, let's say 30 or 10,000 shillings a month, then it's very easy for you to achieve it, because you're not going against that big goal of saving 1,000,000 shillings. You're focusing on the goal of 1,000 shillings or 10 or 20,000 shillings, which is much easier for you to start doing today than focusing on the 1,000,000 shillings, which seems like a big goal and very hard for you to reach. The second thing is always look at the change you've made and not necessarily how far you have to go. So usually in many things in life, you're told always focus on the end goal, and it's the end that matters. But then because every financial goal takes time, and it's a journey that you have to start and it takes time for you to achieve, it's important for you to always look at the change that you're making. So if you've saved 10,000 shillings, always focus on that and say, I didn't have 10,000 in my savings last month. Now I have 10. So how do I get to the next 10 so that I make it 20? How do I get the next 20 so that I make it 40? And with that, you'll be able to have faith in how far you can go, and you'll not keep focusing on the thing that the big goal of saving 1,000,000 shillings that seems like a monster and it will take time for you to achieve. Then the last thing is remember to reward yourself. And here I say this very cautiously about rewarding yourself, because rewarding yourself is very easy for you to take everything that you've saved and say, I'm rewarding myself because I've saved 10,000 shillings. I'm rewarding myself with 9,000 shillings. So you only leave 1,000. Rewarding yourself here is finding small rewards that make you happy, that doesn't necessarily affect your goal, but make you feel that you're achieving something. So you could say to yourself that, if I save 100,000 over the next 1 year, or if I save 100,000 over the next 2 years, then I will reward myself by buying myself a new pair of shoes or a new handbag or new something. Whatever it is, that reward needs to be small, that it doesn't affect your long-term goal, but it also needs to be precious for you to feel that you really earned it and you deserve it for achieving that micro goal. So for you to finish that aspect of understanding that financial goals do take time, the 3 steps is to, number 1, focus on micro goals. So divide up that big goal into small goals that are easier to achieve. Number 2, look at the change that you've made so far, and that will give you faith for how far you can go. And then thirdly, find very cautious and very small ways for you to reward yourself, and this will enable you to be able to have that pride and faith for you to achieve more. So lastly, life always happens. So what happens when we think about life, and that things always happen along the way? So it's very hard for you to plan for everything in life, but you can be able to put aside very small steps for you to be able to be ready when life happens. So the first thing is you can take out risks, the risks that you have in your life. So here, famously, what you need to do is to take the road that is less traveled. Don't be ashamed for you to make decisions that are very different from what everybody else is doing. And first thing could be simple thing like, say, for example, carrying lunch to the office. Could be a simple thing like not having a car while all your friends and all your people and peers have cars. Could be something like where you decide to live, and all those things. Take the road that is less traveled, and trust me, you will find yourself living a much better life, and it will make it much more easier for you to achieve your financial goals. Then secondly, build an emergency fund. And emergency fund, we'll talk about it a bit more in detail, but there's 2 aspects in an emergency fund. So there's an emergency fund for when things go wrong. So what if your tire burst, in case you have a car? What if your tire burst today? What if, if you don't have a car, what if your shoe today decided for the sole to come off? So where do you find the money for you to do such small things that usually come as an emergency? Or somebody could get sick and they urgently need 10, 15, whatever number of shillings that they need for them. So build that emergency fund, and it will help you. Then there is also a survival account, which sometimes you can call a screw you account. So if say your employer decided to move you to a different town, they decided today we are going to move you to be working in Nakuru, but you're not interested in moving to Nakuru. So do you just take the decision and say, okay, I don't really want to go to Nakuru, but because you've said I have to go, it's okay, I will go? Or do you have something that you can say, actually, I choose not to go, and if it's a must I go, then I can decide not to take this job, and I have 3 to 6 months worth of my expenses for me to be able to make that decision and find a job over time. Then thirdly, is to plan for the future. So I give an example here of something that usually comes to many people. So assuming your girlfriend or you just discovered today that you're pregnant, you do have enough time to plan for most of these expenses. The only thing is that we have the habit of waiting till the last minute for us to be able to take that decision. So just using a simple timeline of when you learn that you're pregnant, you have 9 months till your son or daughter is born for you to plan for that birth. And you can plan for diapers within those 9 months. You can plan for new baby clothes. If you think about school, you have about 3 to 4 years to plan for preschool. You have 6 to 7 years to plan for primary school. You have about 14 to 15 to plan for secondary and so on and so forth. But every time you delay that decision, that time reduces. So if you start planning for primary school, by the time your child is in preschool, then you only have 3 years, because it's the gap between the 3 to 4 years that you would have taken when you learned you were pregnant and when you actually learned to start making a plan. So the earlier you start, the better. And that's a simple thing about financial goals. If you start earlier, it will be much easier, and it will be a lot more comfortable to plan for it well in advance than waiting for it to happen. And apply the same for other events. If you have a car, tires wear out. If you don't have a car, shoes wear out, or other things do wear out. Your house today, you could have a sink leaking, a lot of things could happen. Health issues also happen. You could be sick today, you cannot go into your business, to your office. All those things happen. And of course, also death also happens. So how do you plan for some of these things? Of course, some of them are harder for you to plan for because you don't decide when somebody will die or when health issues will happen. But knowing that it's an inevitable, so how do you plan and say, okay, this is for when things do go wrong? And I know as Africans, we find it hard for us to discuss, especially the issues of health and death, because it sounds like we're planning for the worst. But trust me, it's actually planning for the better if you prepare yourself. So to summarize that section, I want to leave you with this good quote by Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Beware of very little expenses, because a small leak will sink a great ship." It's not a big leak that will necessarily sink a big ship. It's even the smallest of leaks that will sink a great ship. So I think I want to pause at that point just to check that we are all together, and also to check in case we have any questions. So far I'm not seeing any questions, but just checking that we are all together. Maybe you can type a quick hello. If you're following, feel free to reach out. Okay, so I can see some chats coming in. You're saying you're following, we're together. So we can continue from there. Okay, so the next bit that we will look at is the first one. We spoke about working on yourself. The second one that we're going to talk about is the working on time. And like I mentioned, financial goals take time to achieve. It's not fast. It's not something that happens tomorrow. It takes time for you to achieve your financial goal. So give yourself the time and the space for you to be able to achieve that goal. Okay. So when you think about time, there's two aspects to time. So three actually, sorry. And it's possibly what attracted you to this. And each of them takes time for you to be able to achieve. So when you think about managing your expenses and creating savings, it's something that takes a lot of time for you to achieve. And it's not very easy for you to do it if you don't give yourself the time. Okay. So expenses can be divided up into two places. Number one, we have fixed expenses, and secondly, we have variable expenses. So fixed expenses are the ones that occur regularly. They could be weekly, could be monthly, could be annually. The amounts don't usually change. So if you think about, for example, rent, it remains consistently the same. If it changes, it only changes maybe once a year or once every couple of years. And same thing with, like, if you have a loan, if you have any car payments, if you have any other bills that usually are consistent, these are what are called fixed expenses. Then variable expenses are the ones that do not occur regularly. and the amounts could change according to the need or choices that you make. So this include things like clothes, gifts, money you spend on vacations, and things like that. So it's important for us to be very careful about for us to understand the expenses, number one, and then secondly, for us to make sure that we are not spending too much in terms of the expenses. And just to give you a few more examples, so fixed expenses could be rent, could be loans, could be mortgages, could be your car insurance, could be school fees, could be water, could be electricity. All those could be your fixed expenses. And then on the right hand side, we have what are your variable expenses. So we have the money you spend on clothes, on gifts. We have black tax, and I'll explain what that is. We have money you spend in the salon or in the spa to treat yourself. And we have things like DSTV, because that could be a choice in terms of it being a need versus a want. So black tax, just to explain what that means. So black tax, usually it's a term that's coined to mean the fact that as Africans, we usually have a burden to make sure that our siblings are well educated, and usually if you're the eldest one, then our parents somehow along the way believe that if you educate the eldest ones, then you can take the time for them to then educate the rest as things go by. So that's what black tax is, and it's usually a burden on the elder or the people who are blessed in their family. And a lot of times you can think about it as a variable expense, because you don't know when it's going to come, you don't know what it's going to cost you, and at the same time you can make a decision whether to spend in it or not. So when after looking at those two different types of budgets, so it's important for us to plan for where our money should go and not necessarily wondering where it went. So very simple principle that we should use is to divide up our expenses into two bits. So there's a famous saying that says pay yourself first. So put money aside for your savings, and at the minimum they should be 10% of how much you earn that you put aside for savings, and then everything else can be 90%. So of course here we don't break down on what rent should be versus what your clothing budget should be, but just kind of work with this rough simple example for you to know how much to spend in savings and how much to spend on everything else. So to achieve this, there's a few things that I would advise. So number one is make sure you allocate money for necessities. And the key thing here is that you need to separate needs and wants. So needs could be, that you need to have a roof over your head, you need to have food, you need to have, many other things. But then wants could be, I want to live in a certain area versus another one. So can you afford to live in that area versus live in a cheaper area? And that's where you can differentiate a need versus a want. Then thirdly is to put your plan into action and to follow it through. It's important for us, once you do decide what your budget will look like, then you need to follow it and make sure that you put it into action. Otherwise, it beats the whole purpose if you do put together a budget and not necessarily follow it through. Then fourthly, it's to plan for seasonal expenses. So seasonal expenses could be like school fees. It occurs once every 3 months. So you need to divide, if your school fees is 30,000 shillings for your child or for your campus or for your further education, and you pay that for yourself, then you need to divide it by how long you have to save. So in the example of school fees, you could decide to say it's 30,000. So if I divide it by a term is 3 months, so I need to save 10 a month. So you just put aside in your monthly budget 10,000 shillings every month, and it's a much easier load than saying every 3 months I will figure out where to find 30,000. That's why we find banks making a lot of money from instant loans, from school fees loans, because people don't plan for these seasonal expenses, and it's very easy for you to look at how long you have to save for it and divide it up. And do it for other seasonal expenses like if you have a car, like your insurance, if you have any other seasonal expenses that occur once. A good example is December is usually a big month, and you always hear the joke around people saying January, because you spend a lot in December. So why not make a plan for December? If you know December you will spend a lot, you know you need to spend some time with your family, spend some time with your friends, then plan for it. I'm sure if you can be able to put aside money every month for your December expenses, it will be much easier than waiting for December to happen and then finding whether it's 10 or 20 or whatever the number of thousand shillings that you need to put aside for your December expenses. Then lastly, it's use financial instruments cleverly. And here, I'll give you an example in more detail as we continue, but make sure to use those financial instruments. For example, you could have a money market account, you could have a savings account. There's also simple things like Mshwari, who have I think it's a lock account or something where you can put money aside and not necessarily be able to access it until a certain period of time. So use such financial instruments and they will enable you to be able to achieve your goal. So a good question is, somebody could be saying, so I have obligations right now and I can't be able to put aside 10% of my money aside today. So what should you do in that case? It's very simple. Make a plan. So start with whatever amount you can be able to put aside today. It could be 1,000 shillings. It could be 500 shillings. Start with that amount and start putting aside today. Then secondly, increase it, the amount that you put aside as you clear your obligations. So say, for example, you have a loan that you're servicing, a bank loan or a mobile loan that you pay. So when you clear a loan, rather than, and that loan say was 5,000 shillings, rather than saying this 5,000 shillings is now money that I can go drinking or I can spoil myself with new shoes every month, then find a way to say, okay, instead of spending 5,000 shillings on new shoes every month, I would spend 2 on new shoes and I will put aside 3,000 shillings for me to start my savings goal. Or even when you get more income, your employer gives you an extra 2,000 shillings in your salary, 10, whatever the amount. As you get that extra income, work towards achieving that 10% goal. And like I said, achieving the goal is a matter of time. So you need to build that plan and see it through. And even if you work in a job that you get bonuses, you get commissions, you get windfalls, usually people see those as holiday money, as I'll treat my friends because I didn't expect this money. But the real way to actually look at it, and the more practical way for you to approach it, is you can decide to divide it up and say, okay, I will reward myself because I did get this bonus out of the hard work that I put in. So maybe I will decide to save 70% of my bonus or my commission, and 30% I will spoil myself with a holiday, with a treat, with whatever it is that you do. But make sure that you put the biggest chunk of it towards a savings, and it will help you to achieve that 10% goal. So the second one is about managing debt. And in managing debt, I just want to come back to these headlines just to bring it home a bit more. So if you think about the 1 billion shillings that people were borrowing every month on Fuliza loans, what that meant is that, and Safaricom charges a 1% interest daily. So Safaricom was easily making 10 million shillings from each and every one of us who was accessing these Fuliza loans. So you can immensely see how big this is business for Safaricom and the banks. And that's why you see these advertisements in TV. They want to entice you in terms of how easy it is for you to get the loan. Just install the app on your phone, just dial star, blah, blah, blah. You'll access, know what your limit is today. And if you fall into those traps, just see how much money they can make, and how big the opportunity is to them. So it's important for us to aim to have good debt. And just to bring it home a bit, we'll differentiate between what good debt is and what bad debt is. So good debt is, say, for example, you take a loan to buy land, to buy mortgage, because that usually appreciates in value, and therefore that is good debt. If you take a loan for you to invest in your education, that could help you to further your income, that's also good debt. If you take debt to invest in a carefully chosen business, and here business is we have to be very careful with it, because people a lot of time take loans to invest in businesses that are not well thought through and all those things, and they end up being stuck with a debt that doesn't necessarily help them. So if you do take time to research the business idea, be sure with it test it out first and then only take the loan to grow the business, then a business loan can be good debt. And then lastly, if you find an opportunity where you could take a loan for you to invest the money, say for example in something that gives you a higher return than what you're paying in interest, then that of course could be good debt. But then on the other side, there's bad debt. And a good example is what we see a lot of times people doing. So they take car loans. Cars are usually depreciating assets, so they decrease in value as time goes by, and you're stuck with a loan on an asset that tomorrow is worth more than what it is worth today. Secondly is a credit card. So we get easily enticed with you can access a credit card, your limit is increased, those kind of things. And credit card debt usually funds lifestyle gaps that we have. So in case today you really want to buy this new TV and you don't have the money, then you think, okay, I'll take the money from the credit card and pay it slowly over time. And that's an example of bad debt. Mobile loans, as we spoke about, we've seen the Fuliza example of how much Safaricom is doing. Usually also these fund lifestyle gaps, and these are also bad debts. And then lastly, we have cash advances that you can get from your employer. You apply for an advance on the 15th, knowing your salary is coming on the 30th. So unless it's an emergency, you should really avoid these things, because it simply means that if you do take a cash advance today, then your salary will come less what you took as an advance. And of course, that means that you'll have to find more money for you'll have to take another loan for you to pay what you lost in terms of your income. So good debt, key things is that it helps you grow in value. It's usually within your budget. And remember, we spoke about preparing a budget, and it usually has a low interest rate. Bad debt, on the other side, usually funds your lifestyle. You want to be seen as a certain caliber or a certain level of a person. So that's what bad debt usually funds. It usually fills expense gaps. So when you do your budget, you find, okay, I have a gap of 2,000 or 10,000 or whatever the amount is. Then you take on debt to fill your expense gap. The problem is you'll be stuck in that debt forever, because you'll always have to find another 10,000 the next month, because that expense gap, you've not filled it in a sustainable way. Then usually bad debt is also unplanned and not within your budget. And sometimes it can be backed by a depreciating asset, in the example of a car. So how should you build a plan for you to clear your debt, and what's the most effective way for you to do it? So if you do have debt, then most debt you should be able to make a plan for you to clear it within 3 years. If not possible, it can be 5, but at the same time, just it's about starting and the journey and sticking to it, and less about the time period that it takes. So there's 2 methods for you to clear debt. The first one is called the avalanche method, and I'll explain it what that means. It's simply that you pay off the debt with the highest interest rate first. So in this example, you have somebody with credit card debt that's at 1.5% interest rate monthly, which is about 19.5 annually. You have a mobile loan that you pay 3% monthly, which is about 42.5 annually. And then you could have a car loan that you service at 14% annually. So using this method, the payoff sequence for your loans is that you'd work towards paying loan number 2 first. And after you've paid out loan number 2, you'd then pay out loan number 1. And then lastly, you'd pay out loan number 3. So that's a simple sequence that you'd use in the avalanche method. There's also what we call the snowball method. In the snowball method, what happens is you pay off the debt based on the size of the loan. So just adding a few more details to the same examples we've looked at. So you have a credit card loan that's 10,000 shillings at 1.5% monthly interest. You have a mobile loan that's 50,000 at 3% monthly interest. And then you have a car loan that's 100,000 at 14% interest annually. So in this particular case, because you're starting with the smallest loan and working towards the biggest one, what happens is you take the first loan, you clear it, you then go to the second one, you clear it, and then you go to the third one and clear it. But there's 2 factors to consider in order for us to understand what is the better method of these 2. So number 1 is the interest exposure. So how much do you pay back to your financials as interest? So for example, if we use the snowball method, the mobile loan, which is just 50,000 shillings, but at 3% monthly interest, you're actually paying more in interest monthly compared to the credit card loan. That's, yes, smaller, but at 1.5% monthly interest. So that's why it's important for you to understand how much interest you're paying. And I don't want to go into a lot of the math to understand what the actual interest value you're paying is, but it's important for you just to look at the numbers and to understand what that looks like. And then secondly is the time value of money. Just to explain in the briefest way is that a shilling today will not cost the same as a shilling tomorrow. It will not buy you the same as a shilling tomorrow. So the sooner you can be able to clear your loans, the lower you can get your interest rate to be, then the more you'll be able to achieve by you clearing your loans faster. So based on these two factors to consider, what we then find is that the avalanche method is usually better than the snowball method. So in case you have different types of debt, so do go back to the contract, look at what each of them is charging you on a monthly, on an annual basis, and then from there, work out which one you need to clear first. And then once you clear a loan, let's say you are paying 1,000 shillings every month for your mobile loan, then once you do clear that, don't take that 1,000 and put it into your expenses or decide this is money for you now. Take that same money that you are paying on that loan and then add it as an increment on your second loan that you're now working towards finishing. So in this case, if it's, for example, the credit card debt, then you'd move, if you're paying 5,000 for your mobile loan every month, then you move that 5,000 to become an additional payment to your credit card debt. So if you are paying 1,000 for your credit card, you'd now be paying 1,000 plus the 5,000 you had from your mobile loan, which would be 6,000, and it will enable you to clear your credit card debt faster. And then once you finish your credit card debt, then you take the full 6,000 and then put it as an incremental payment on your car loan, and you'll be able to clear your car loan faster. And this, for most people, when you do this math, it usually works out to clearing your debt within 3 years. Okay. So the last bit is on getting more sources of income. And I just wanted to start with a simple quote from the Bible that usually says, "Man shall not live on bread alone." And we'll also illustrate it with simple examples from companies that we know locally. So we have a company like Safaricom. If you think about the sources of income for Safaricom, so they're a traditional telecom company. So what they do is they charge us money every time we make a call, every time we send an SMS, and also to use data, they charge us money for that. But they've actually expanded from just the traditional telecom ways, and they get more money just from offering more services. So secondly, they invest in, they sell phones, they sell accessories, and I think now you can even get a phone that you pay, I think it's 20 shillings every day. So that's of course making them money and additional money from just you calling and sending a message. Thirdly, they have internet, which you can connect to. They provide M-Pesa, which of course we know is very big for us, just to send money to people. And then they also have certain partnerships with banks, good examples of Fuliza and Mshwari, where they make money. So taking the second example of KCB. So KCB within the banking sector, they of course work with the traditional ways of banking. So they charge us fees for you having an account, could be monthly fees for withdrawing your cash and those kind of things. They provide loans, and also they invest the money that we give them, of course, making some interest income on that. So the other thing that they've done is expand their ways of making money. So they invest in businesses. We of course know they have the Biashara Club, they have Lions Den, which they front a lot, and all these are to add them more money because they are expanding their sources of income. And then they also offer mobile loans, which are, aside from the traditional loans where you have to go to a bank physically and sign forms and get approval, they offer a loan that you can install an app on your phone or whatever it is and get the cash quickly. And with this, they do make a lot more money. So what about you? Do you just rely on your salary? Do you just rely on your business? If you're a farmer, do you rely on just farming, or do you have more sources of income that you can then leverage on? And if one does not work out, then you can be able to make more money from another one. So just to come to the point that it's important for us to expand our sources of income. And income can be divided into two bits. We have active income, which is usually earned income. And this usually comes from our jobs, usually from us selling our time. So you work from 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or whatever your hours, and you earn a salary, you earn bonuses, commissions. It could be profits from the business that you run. But all this, the problem with earned income is that, number one, it's usually prone to higher tax than passive income. And then secondly is, for you to earn more, you literally have to work more hours or figure out a way for you to clone yourself. Because if you want to have a higher salary, it's either you wait a few years, get a promotion, or you figure out a way to work more hours, maybe earn more in terms of commissions and bonuses and those kind of things. But then passive income, on the other hand, is you don't really have to spend your time. It usually makes money for you as you sleep. So if you invest in a business, and the right kind of a business that can make you money without you being there, so that can make you profit income. Rent, for those people who are landlords, of course, they just wait for the month, the calendar to change the month, and they then earn more income. The thirdly is dividends. If you have stocks, then you earn money from your dividends. Then you can also have interest income that you get from either lending money or from your investments. And then lastly, we have capital gains. If you have stocks and tomorrow they gain value, today you bought them at 10, tomorrow you sell them at 20, then you earn income there because the asset has increased in value. So it's important for us to find a way to make money while we're sleeping. And few ways for us to do that is to find the right balance. And this takes time. So for you to be able to make the money and move from just relying on from relying on active income to generating passive income, it takes time. So as I mentioned, it's important for you to start doing it now, and then give it time to grow. If you do start a business today, if you invest in building or buying land for you to then build a house for you to then start collecting rent, it's going to take time. Because if say, for example, you're relying on your salary or your savings, it will take time for you to start putting the money aside before you can be able to buy the land, and then put the money aside again for you to start building. But the important thing is to start now. If you don't start now, you will not reap the benefits. Then thirdly is, don't take too much time perfecting the plans. Just find ways for you to get started now, and then learn as you go and correct as you go. If you take time to perfect the plans, build a 20-page business plan, what stops somebody tomorrow from starting this exact same business that you want to do? So we really have to figure out a way. If you well research your business idea and you're happy with it, you can decide to start it in a simple way today, and then over time correct, learn, invest in learning a bit more about the business, and then over time you can then perfect the plans as you go. And lastly, preferably we should invest in something that does not require capital. So a lot of times what kills businesses is the fact that they have fixed expenses. Fixed expenses could be rent, could be that you have a car that you need to keep servicing and those kind of things. And that capital usually kills businesses. And it also comes with a risk. So if you can find a business that you can start from your own home before you necessarily have a shop, then start it today, because the only thing it will require is for you to cut a few square foot in your bedroom or in your sitting room or wherever it is, and then you can then invest a little bit of money that's of course lower risk than you paying somebody rent every month, and whether you make money or not, your rent is due and payable to them. So I'm sure the question you're asking yourself, so how do you expand your income and expand your income sources? So the problem with active versus passive income is that it takes time. You have to start with active income. You have to start with your investing your time before you can then convert and start earning passive income. So here's just a few sources that you could start looking at what you can do. So a lot of these sites, Upwork, Fiverr, Hustle also has a few more inside. So if you go to these sites, you can then decide what you want to do. So say, for example, a long time ago, I used to make money from doing online writing. I used to do designs for people and those kind of things, and they would pay me money for it. And back then I used to use Upwork. Of course, now over time I've not been able to do it, but it used to be a very good source of income. And still to date, there's still people who do work there. And and if you can start today, just learn a new skill. The good thing is we have the University of YouTube that is free. If, say, for example, you want to learn how to do article writing, if you do go to YouTube and just type how to write articles, you get thousands of videos that you can watch. Just give yourself the time to learn. And over time, you can now start having that active income, which you can then convert to passive income. So again, before we get to the last bit and get to question and answer, I can see we have a few questions already that have come. So just checking that we are together, checking if there's any that have not lost you and that we are all together. So maybe we can type a quick, yes, we are together, or leave your questions as well in the chat box, and we'll come to them once we get to the Q&A section. Okay, so brilliant. I can see some chats coming in. So we're saying we're together. Thank you for that. So the last part is discipline. And like I mentioned, it's not just discipline, it's a lot of discipline that you need for you to be able to achieve your financial goals. So first is to start with a quote. Self-discipline is when you hear your conscience tell you something and you don't talk back to it. So you don't tell it that, I know better than your conscience knows. So it's important for us to be able to use our conscience cleverly and to hear what it's telling us. And I'll give you two very simple ways for you to achieve self-discipline, and it will help you a lot to be able to start on this journey. So number one is to automate. And the reason for this is if you have money sitting around in your account, in cash in your wallet, you'll definitely spend it. So if you don't have the money, then you're less likely to spend it. So automate as much as possible, and we'll go through that in a bit more detail. And then secondly, it's to apply a simple what if procedure. So we'll go through it in a bit more detail, but you ask yourself, what if you didn't go out every weekend? What if you brought lunch to the office? And then make those decisions and see how that impacts your life and your financial performance. So first thing is to automate your cash. And for you to automate your cash is you have to understand your money cycle. So if your employer always pays you on the 5th, rather than sitting and thinking we are always paid late because everybody else is paid on the 30th or on the 25th, just understand that that's your your money cycle and be willing to then work within it. Then secondly is to pay off your fixed expenses. So remember when we spoke about fixed expenses being the ones that don't change, and the examples here were rent, school fees, and those other expenses. Okay, and those are the expenses. Again, just checking that we are still together and that there is no technical hitch. So maybe we could type a quick yes if we're still together. Okay, So I'll go back to the point of paying your fixed expenses immediately. So as I mentioned, fixed expenses are those that don't change. So you have rent, you have any loans that are due. Those don't usually change. So pay them off as soon as you get money into your account. So if you do get paid on the 5th early, let's say for example on the 28th, then you need to make sure that even if you're paying it off early, first of all, reduce the amount of money that you have. Then in case you have occasional expenses like school fees, insurance, then at the same time pay this off, or put the money aside somewhere where preferably you have limited access to. So once you've paid off your fixed expenses and you've accounted for your variable expenses, any other excess cash that you have, put it away to a place that preferably earns you interest, but you have limited access to it. So this could be a fixed deposit account, this could be a money market fund. And the good thing is right now, it's very easy for you to get access to all these things, and you don't need to have 100,000 or 200,000 or 1,000,000 shillings. Even with just as little as 1,000 shillings, if you walked into a bank, to an insurance, they can offer you a fixed deposit or a money market fund that you can invest in and be topping up every month. So don't think that these are things for the rich, people who have 1,000,000, 100,000. It's just about starting the journey today. So put all your excess cash away, and trust me, you'll feel a huge shift in how you spend. Because if you reduce your money to a level where it stops driving your decisions, then you will make the right decisions. Don't have the money just sitting around. Put it away, and it will earn you interest, and you will be on that journey. Then in automating your expenses, it's also important for you to automate your savings. And like I said, again, saving is also a journey. You don't start immediately and you're able to save 10%. But if you're able to, then well and good. If you're not, then do have a plan and stick to it. So there's 3 types of savings that I recommend you work on. So number 1 is building an emergency fund. And ask yourself a few questions. So what if you fell sick today? What if you got an accident? What if your tire burst in case you have a car? The most recent thing that happened, what if Magoha gives you 3 days notice for you to take your kids back to school? And even during this COVID time, something that you've seen happen a lot is, what if your employer gave you a pay cut? They decided you have to stay with 10% or 15 or 20 or 50% of your salary. You have to take home less that. So build that emergency fund and put that money where you cannot access it. It's not about building the emergency fund in your account where you know you have 5,000 that you don't touch. Put it somewhere even further away. It's still your money, but the reason why you put it somewhere further away is that for you to make that decision, for you to take it out, it will be a bit harder, and it will enable you to work towards that goal. Then the second bit is build a screw you fund, or build a secondary fund for your expenses. So here, build about 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses. So remember, after you did your budget, you knew my fixed expenses say 20,000. My variable expenses are 20,000. So in total, my expenses are 40,000, just again, using random figures. So if you then build 3 months worth of your expenses and put it aside, then in case anything happens, if your employer decides to move you to another town and you're not interested in moving because of family reasons, because of personal reasons, then you can say, I don't really need to do this. So I do have a bit of time that I can give myself, and I will take the time for me to save, for me to find my next job. If your employer decides to lay you off, you can also say, instead of crying and saying, oh my God, this is going to be the worst, at least you'll have somewhere a soft cushion for you to start off, because you'll have the money saved. And then lastly, it's build a retirement fund. So we need to stop thinking of our children as our retirement fund. We need to stop thinking of our rich relatives or rich friends as our retirement fund. We need to save for our retirement. And NSSF will never be enough. So in case your employer has a retirement fund, invest in the retirement fund. If they don't, then either put money aside in a fixed deposit account, put money aside in a money market fund or wherever you put the money, but basically put money aside that you build a retirement fund with. And again, it's easier said than done for us to build these three funds. But like I said, it's a journey. So after you work on first building an emergency fund, because of course that would be the smallest pot. So say for example, if your monthly expenses are 50,000 shillings, you could say my emergency fund will be a 20,000 shilling fund. So if anything happened today, I have 20,000 that I can access quickly and use to pay off any emergency expenses. So that's the first thing. Then secondly, after you've built your emergency fund, then start working towards building your screw you fund or your secondary expense fund. So build about 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses. And then after that, now start working on your retirement. And trust me, if you do achieve each of these goals, the satisfaction it will give you, the fact that you will not go to a bank whenever emergencies happen, the fact that you will have a lot more control of the decisions in your life, you will feel a lot more happy, and it will also enable you to achieve that financial independence that you're looking for. Then lastly, find your what ifs and then take an action on them. So this could mean reviewing your variable expenses, especially those that you don't, or even the capital expenses, and evaluate whether these are needs or they are wants, and be practical and honest with yourself. So ask yourself, what if you didn't buy a new TV? Maybe you wanted to buy a new TV. What is the worst that could happen if you didn't buy a new TV? What if you ate out just once a week? Maybe you're the kind of person who likes eating out every day. So what if you ate out just once a week? What if you drove to work less often and maybe relied on your work together with your colleagues to carpool? Today you drive to the office, tomorrow I'll drive to the office. These kind of things, in as much as you'll be saving 100 shillings today, 200 shillings tomorrow, they'll work out to something bigger over time. Remember, 100 shillings every day is 3,000 shillings in a month. 3,000 shillings in a month is 36,000 in a year. And trust me, if you had nothing in savings and you are able to work to 36,000 in a year, it's a huge achievement compared to where you were initially. So just as a summary, the aim of today is not for you to live like a poor man or a poor woman's life. It's important for us to be gender sensitive, but it's for us to be as practical as possible. So every Tuesday in November, we are offering a class, and we are offering 20 free slots in the class. So from tomorrow, you can check out the details on our website. You can join the class, apply for the scholarship, and it will be very live and interactive for you to learn more about how to achieve this. But again, we've provided the principles for you to get started in today's session. So before we head off for the questions, just final thought. In as much as yes, today we've just spoken about making money, there's a lot more that you can make other than money. You can, of course, make art, you can make friends, you can make time, you can make merry with your friends, you can make love, you can make peace, you can make wishes, and you can make believe. So I just wanted to end at that point. So thank you very much. You've been an awesome audience. And now we'll head over to the question and answers. So I think the first question comes from an anonymous person, but they say saving is hard. How does one save a little when the income is not proportional to the expense? So I think the important bit about that question is that right now you could be having certain expenses that you're locked in and you can't necessarily change. And like I said, it's important for you to understand that financial investment takes time, and it's a journey that counts. So find a way to get started today. So if, say, for example, you have expenses that are more than, go back to your budget and ask yourself, what if? So what if I move to a different place? what if we reduced how much we spend on food? What if we sold our car and paid back the car loan? What if we did other things? And once you do take action on each of those what ifs that come in place, then over time, within a few couple of months, you will start seeing that you'll achieve your financial goals. And then lastly, you will free up money for saving, which you can then use to build more savings and to achieve more of your financial goals. So just as a reminder, it takes time, but it's the start that counts. So ask yourself what you can start doing today and start doing it right away. Then the second part of that question was, is taking a loan a bad idea? So if we're thinking about it in that context, about funding your expense gaps using a loan, yes, that's a very bad idea. And sorry, I have to be a bit blunt on that, because the moment you take a loan to fund your expense gaps, then you're paying interest because you're unable to make tough choices with your life. So from today, if you just go back to your budget and say, I want to reduce a few things. I want to reduce how much I spend on food, on clothing, on those kind of things, and work towards it. It will cost you a lot less than if you took a loan, because if you take a loan, then what you're basically doing is that you're stretching out your. So the second question comes from John, who's saying, where's the best place to save your money? Is it a bank? Is it a SACCO? Or is it insurance? So that's a good question. And again, it depends on what your specific goal is. So if you're trying to save for an emergency fund, of course, you'd want to put it in a savings account, preferably with a bank. If you want to save for your screw you fund or your secondary income fund, then you'd want somewhere where you can access the money within maybe a week notice, which you can put either within a SACCO or within like a money market fund. And then also look at how much you're earning from your savings. So different types of savings will have different interests amounts. So of course, depending on how much you've put aside, you'll want to choose the right place for you to save money based on where you get the best interest. So it's important for us to look at them, not just whether the bank is the right place or whether the SACCO is the right place, but based on what the objective is, the money that you're putting aside, and then choose where's the right place for you to put the money. Okay. Then the third one is, are there any tips on how to minimize taxes and tax charges? So yes, so just the short answer to the question is, one way for you to reduce your taxes is increase how much, in case your employer offers a pension fund. So if you increase how much you pay to the pension, any money you pay to the pension, usually up to 20,000 shillings a month, is not usually taxed. So that's one way to reduce your tax. Secondly, it could be things like insurance does offer some products like life insurance policies and the like, which also reduce your taxes. But ultimately, the best way for you to reduce your taxes is find a way to grow your passive income. So you working at your job, then you're exposed to tax based on how much your income is. That goes all the way till 25, 30% of your income. However, the landlord who collects rent every month only needs to pay 10% as tax. So just think about it. The more you can be able to invest in passive income and have more houses that you collect rent from, then your tax ultimately has reduced from 30% if you're selling your time to 10% if you're collecting rent. So that's the simple answer to how to reduce your tax charges. So would you recommend accumulating debt under one source? So I'm guessing the question here is about whether we can be able to accumulate debt, bit debt. So if you have a credit card debt, if you have mobile loan and those kind of things, so you think about consolidating. So yes, definitely that could be a choice that you make, depending on the interest that you're paying. So using the example that we showed earlier, so it might make sense for you to go to the bank, take a loan at 14% interest for you to clear a loan that's charging you 40% interest annually. So you just need to calculate, do the math carefully so that you don't end up losing. But yes, sometimes it does make sense for you to consolidate the debt under one source. So seeing a few questions here, people asking whether we will send the presentation and to send the video. So yes, definitely you'll get that in your emails tomorrow. So please look out for that. So again, going through the Q&A to check if we have any more questions. So we have another anonymous question. So I read of how KRA was to charge online vendors. Are there ways to operate at low taxes? So I think if the question is whether to escape the tax or to pay it, I think it's important because one way or another KRA will find you. So if you have to pay, then the earlier you start paying, the better. But then at the same time, the thing to also think about is if you want to reduce your charges, as I mentioned, your taxes, as I mentioned, is to work towards passive income. And even, for example, for the tax charge for online vendors, I think it's still way lower than tax that you make from the tax that you pay on your salary. So a simple way to look at it is if you can make the money online using creative ways, using Fiverr, using Upwork, you still pay a lot less in taxes once the KRA starts charging for the tax. Okay, so Fidel is asking of the at least 10% that is to be saved, is part of inclusive the savings, is part of inclusive of savings for investment, or it's just savings alone? I think that's a good question. He's asking whether this is including savings for investment or just savings alone. So of course it includes both. If you're saving for investments or just saving for building an emergency fund and those kind of things, the most important is to have that 10% amount, so that at least that's money that's going to generate more money for you in future. So if you start saving and work towards that goal of 10%, whether it's for investment or you're just saving to build an emergency fund and those kind of things, it would be good for you to start, and the sooner you start, the better. So another question is, can you contribute more towards NHIF than the automatic payment based on your salary tier? I think what you mean is NSSF and not necessarily NHIF in terms of it being your pension fund. For me, I would say save the money somewhere else, just because, we have very little faith in our government systems, or rather I have little faith in our government systems. And it might make more sense for you to save the money with a bank or with in a money market fund or something like that, or even in an actual pension fund. If you walk to a pension fund and say you want to sign up as an individual, I'm sure there's a product that they could offer you, and you'll get a much better return on your investment than putting the money in. But again, that's just my personal opinion. Not to be used, as to mean that the government is not doing a good job. So Nancy, you're asking, how do you increase your debt repayment? And then the second part of the question is, should it be for the interest first or for the principal? So how you increase your debt repayment is starting off from the process of defining your budget. Once you define how much are your fixed expenses, how much are your variable expenses. So what you then do is you then look at each of those expense buckets and see where you can cut. So if you can be able to let go of some of the expenses that you spend on a monthly basis, then you can find money to increase your debt repayment. That's one example. And then secondly, if you do get any commissions, bonuses from your employer, that's also money that you could say, rather than spending it to spoil yourself, you could decide to spend it on increasing your debt repayment. And then the second part of the question is, should we use the increased debt repayment to pay off interest or to pay off principal. The thing is, use it to pay principal. And the reason for that is because when you use it to pay off principal, remember interest is usually on a reducing balance. So if your balance today is 100,000, if the principal today is 100,000 and you lower it to 90,000, the interest you will pay today versus the interest you will pay tomorrow will be much lower. So you should always work towards any increased money that you put aside should always reduce your principal so that your interest continues reducing. I think that's that in terms of the questions that I saw. So unless there is any other questions, just checking in case there's any that I've forgotten to answer. So I'm seeing a lot of people saying this is a good session, a good presentation. You're most welcome. And thank you to everyone who's been following. So I'm seeing Evelyn saying you're following closely. You find shopping therapeutic. The tip on finding ways of spending time that could potentially give me the same feeling is appreciated. You're most welcome, Evelyn. And a lot more people saying they're together. Yep, so you're most welcome. Ruth, you're saying this is very insightful. You're also very welcome. So thank you very much. Apologies, took a few more extra minutes than what was initially planned, but I hope this was a helpful session for each and every one of you. And of course, feel free to reach out in case of any questions. So there's a short 1 minute survey that will come at the end when you do end the call. So feel free to leave your feedback. Just let us know how this session was. If you enjoyed, you know, how much you've learned. Ian, you're saying thank you, I've learned a lot. You're most welcome. So yeah, feel free to leave your feedback, and thank you very much. You have been an awesome audience. Thank you, thank you. Do enjoy your evening.